Can you remember these numbers until the end of this video without writing them down? 360240. What does that have to do with National Registry? It's all about learning strategies. With a solid learning strategy, National Registry isn't that hard of a test. We're going to make a series of videos for you on some well-established learning techniques. This isn't a hack. We don't have a cheat code for National Registry. These are just techniques that are going to make class easier, National Registry easier, and make you a better provider on the streets. This first video, we're going to talk about something you've probably heard of. It's called anchoring. We're going to figure out how to apply this to EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic school. And we're going to start with all things an elephant. When I talk about an elephant, you start thinking about it. You don't have a single neuron that contains all the information you know about the elephant. You have a color neuron. You have a size neuron, right? You have your experiences. Some of them might be a childhood trip to the zoo or a documentary you watched. Everything you know about elephants isn't a single neuron. It's a network of neurons. And every time we review material, we make this network more dense. And the denser this network of neurons, the easier information is to recall and retain. So what's that have to do with anchoring? Well, if I give you a random number, not the one from the beginning of the video, but another random number, 18, and I tell you, please remember this number for a few weeks or a few months. I'm not saying you guys can't remember it, but it's going to take effort to memorize this number. You're going to either have to write it down or say it over and over. But if you can anchor it to something, for example, if I told you that an elephant's gestation period is 18 months, you're doing two things. You make that number much easier to remember. Now, when I ask you in a few months, what's the gestation period of an elephant? It's easy to recall. You're seeing that number from a different perspective when you've attached it or anchored it to a group of existing neurons. The other thing that's going on is you're reinforcing the neurons that already existed there. So how's this work for EMT? How can I use this for advanced EMT? How is this going to help me in paramedic? Well, let's use a drug card, for example. You're a brand new student and you get a drug card for albuterol. A lot of students will take that card and they're trying to remember the dose, the indications, the contraindications, precautions, and side effects. And they try to memorize that entire card. And what you're doing is you're just building a brand new neural network. But it's taxing and difficult to build these neural networks. Speed up that process, which ultimately leads to you being a better provider, not just better on the test, but a better provider. It helps you understand why things are the way they are, and you build a thicker neural network. What if we could just tie into an existing neural network so we didn't have to build a new network every time we were exposed to new information? With our example, albuterol, the indications are bronchial constriction or conditions like asthma. That's associated with the respiratory system. And if we have a decent understanding of the respiratory system, we already did the work of building that neural network. We know that it contains the lungs, and the lungs contain 5 lobes. We knew the trachea is a large pipe. It divides into the left and right main stem bronchi. The airways get smaller and smaller and become bronchioles, and those bronchioles are wrapped in smooth muscle, and ultimately they terminate in the alveoli, and so on and so forth. Studied and passed the AEMT section of your course, you have an established neural network. So let's attach albuterol to that existing neural network. Rather than worrying about the entire card, just focus on the indications, bronchial constriction or conditions like asthma. So we can tie into this existing neural network. Now, every time we tie into it, not only are we making it easy to remember, but we're strengthening the existing neural network by anchoring something new to something we already know. And then after we have a firm, solid understanding of the indications, we can start associating the dose with the indication and the medication, and we start building another neural network that's tied into this already existing neural network. Now, I use a drug card as an example, but you can, all the treatments and conditions, as you're learning them, don't look at them as individual topics. Figure out a way to tie them to existing knowledge, and it'll be a lot easier to remember. Do you remember that number from the beginning of the video? What if I told you to read me that number back 6 months from now when you're sitting in front of National Registry? Would you be able to remember it? Yeah, possibly if you put in a ton of effort, but how much effort would it take to memorize that 6 digits? You'd have to write it down a whole bunch or say it over and over because that number has no context to you. But what if I told you that the number 360240 was just 3 times a normal blood pressure? 120 times 3 is 360, 80 times 3 is 240. Now, if I asked you this number 6 months from now, you would be able to recall it because you have an understanding of vitals. The purpose of this demonstration / experiment with the number isn't about memorizing the number. It's about highlighting how difficult it would be to memorize that number and be able to regurgitate it back. But when I associate it with something that you already understand, it becomes a lot easier to remember. And if I asked you 3 months from now or 6 months from now, what is that number? It would be so much easier for you to recall. I hope this helps. You guys be safe.